Hello everyone, I'm Zibboyeye, and today I felt like rambling about video game movies, partially in lieu of the recent Resident Evil movie trailer. Now, if you can't guess from the rows of video games back here, video games are my first passion, not in terms of priority, but as a kid into teenage years, I loved and mostly devoted my times to video games before discovering my love of movies. So put the two together and you get a match made on Earth. Yeah, some of these I don't like, some of these I do like, and we're gonna get to them. I find watching these movies interesting because video games and movies are quite different mediums. It's not like adapting a book or even a TV show, which is already within the narrative format, although some video games do veer more into the storytelling territory. I think it's interesting to take what video games have, which is often geared towards the player having the action of playing it, and to strip that away and make it a linear narrative experience. And we're gonna see how these movies fare in doing that, or at least how I feel about them. Starting with one that I loved as a kid, Sonic the Hedgehog OVA. The Sonic the Hedgehog OVA might be one of my first animes, that or Dragon Ball. But it's also one of the first movies that I fell in love with, although probably not on the same level of the likes of Toy Story, which Disney and Pixar movies were in regular circulation from underneath my mom's bed in the little VHS bin into the player. It's not on the level of those, but it's one that stuck in my mind as a kid because I had to go out and get it. It wasn't like the other ones which we owned. I remember going to Blockbuster and renting this tape over and over again. At the time, I had played Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 maybe. Not that that mattered too much, it exposed me to the characters, but this is its own world. Even though it's in the classic style, it's separate even from the continuity of the classic games. Not like that had much story to begin with. Although given the anime style that it's classic Sonic and also it's Metal Sonic, this is a story that really resembles Sonic CD. That's probably where they took the most inspiration from. And I remember as a kid, I had watched tons of Toy Story, Finding Nemo, but those weren't action cartoons. I loved Teen Titans and TMNT growing up, so action cartoons on TV were covered. But in terms of movies, there wasn't too much. So I remember that I was really drawn to the fast-paced, speedy action of Sonic OVA. A few years back I rewatched it with my girlfriend and it still holds up, it's still fun. Oh, and not to mention the soundtrack, it's kind of funky. Look-alike is a joy to hear, and that also adds to the feel of this being a bit Sonic CD-ish. It's funny now because I think of the connotation with direct-to-video movies, especially direct-to-video animated features, and just that image alone brings to mind cheap animation and cheap cash-ins. But I look at the OVA, and I'm gonna weeb out, I don't care. Like, you know, the care and love for animation in Japan, like you just feel that in Sonic OVA. It's interesting to think like this was direct to tape because this is a good watch. I can see why I wanted to rent it so much, and it's a shame that it's so rare today. I think it might have gotten a DVD release, but you know, if you want it, pay up, or you can just find it on the internet. Wow, so if that was direct to video, how great is the Sonic movie that made it to theaters? Look, I'm not a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie or Sonic the Hedgehog the movie, the live action one with Jim Carrey. It's hard to talk about the movie and not talk about the hubbub that preceded it. Paramount released a trailer with an unbelievably butt-ugly Sonic, fans got rightfully mad, and then the studios listened and changed it. And there was this narrative of, wow, they actually listened to fans? And I remember certain sentiments like, well, you know, we complained, we owe them to watch it now that they changed it. And I think, No, you don't. They didn't change it to be nice to fans. They changed it because fans went, hey, I don't want to give you my money. Wow, no, we won't get money? Okay, we'll listen to you. Wow, the studio really cares about the fans. Okay, I made a video expressing that sentiment long ago. If you dig far enough in my videos, you'll find it. So, what about the movie itself? I didn't like it, and it comes down to Sonic's character. I think when making an adaptation, character is paramount. You could change the story beats some bits, but if the character is off, what do you got? What is this an adaptation of? If I'm paying to see Sonic the Hedgehog and I don't feel like I'm seeing Sonic on screen, what do you got? And that's how it felt for me. Sonic in the games is a cool, like, teenage-ish character. He's easygoing and not afraid to get quippy. But Sonic in this movie, yeah, he has some quips, and he flosses, but he acts like a little kid. That's where they focused his speed. They thought, oh, he has energy like a little kid, so he'll excitedly look, hey, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Hey, that bar that's gonna be a scene for a bar fight? Oh, that looks cool. That was one where I specifically remember thinking, Sonic thinks that place looks cool? Now, people say the sequels are better. Sonic 2 is more about the actual animals you care about. They bring Tails into the fray. In fact, Tails is the closing sequel tease at the end of this movie, and it even features his voice actress from the games, which I imagine they probably, if this weren't cobbled together to quickly appease the fans and convince them, I imagine they probably would have went for a more recognizable Hollywood figure. But I'm glad they got the voice actress from the games. That's pretty cool. So what do I think of the sequels? I don't know. I don't want to watch them. Sonic Adventure 2 is one of my favorite games ever. So I, of course, was interested in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but I didn't want to watch Sonic the Hedgehog 2. At the end of the first movie, the sequel teases, they have Eggman bald, so he has a reason to actually be called Eggman, and Tails shows up, and I just think, why did I have to sit through a first movie to get to something that actually resembles the franchise I like? So on the principle of that, I didn't feel too interested in 2 or 3. Looking at this, I still wonder, why couldn't they just have made a movie set in the games? And that's because they want this to introduce people to the series, and not that Sonic is that complex anyway, that you get lost in the weeds of lore. You could just make a simple story about Sonic, and it didn't have to be about coming to the human world and tagging along with some boring guy. Oh boy, that sentiment's gonna come back later, but for now, we're going further back in time to one of the most notorious video game movies, the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Not the new one, the original live-action one. This is one that I also have memories of from when I was a kid. Not blockbuster-based memories, but pirating off YouTube-based memories. As a kid, I was a big Nintendo boy, and when I heard there was a Super Mario Bros. Movie, I just had to see it. I was curious. And back in the day, you could find several movies uploaded in parts of 10-minute videos onto YouTube. So I saw the Super Mario Bros. Movie as 10-minute clips that eventually went out of sync, and the description had to say, sorry, the voice is out of sync from this point on. And I watched the whole movie that way, and as a kid, I actually liked it. Luigi was my favorite though, so I think I liked that the film was more about him. And I understand why everyone was upset. I understand why this is an infamous movie, especially when you had to pay up to see it in the theaters. But watching it as an oddity on the internet, there can be a sense of ironic enjoyment of it today. Now people have accepted, and it's known as just a weirdo kind of movie, especially as an adaptation of the old video games. Given that context, I can find some laughter in it. Bob Hoskins gives the classic "Luigi, I'm home" Brooklyn accent performance, which everyone at the time thought Mario would sound like. As, well, when you say Italian plumber, I guess that's just what comes to mind. It's easy to forget that it's not until Charles Martinet that Mario vocally became the voice we know. And I know almost everyone points at Leguizamo as Luigi and says, "Where's the mustache?" But I'm gonna be honest, I think Leguizamo plays a good Luigi. It's just a shame that he's held back by, well, if you know the behind the scenes of this movie, if I recall right, the directors were pretty harsh. Leguizamo wanted to improv and they wouldn't let them. I don't know, I guess they really didn't want to have their actors have fun on set. It's a shame because were Leguizamo and Hoskins given more legroom to enjoy their time on set, the movie might be more fun. As is, it's not a great movie, of course not, it's not even a good one, but it can be oddly enjoyable seeing the Blade Runner-esque Mushroom Kingdom. The world of Mario has become more defined over the years, which makes for a more accurate movie years later in Super Mario Bros. The Movie. I remember coming home from class, excited to see the trailer with my girlfriend, and we thought it looked pretty good. But I will also never forget that the day it came out in theaters and my girlfriend bought a ticket and she walked out, called me up and said, "They tricked me. It's just another generic Illumination movie." And after seeing it, I agree. The trailers did some massive heavy lifting here to pretend the movie had some dignity. Everyone leading up to it was joking about how the Mario movie trailer would be. Oh, what licensed song would be in the trailer? Oh, what stupid joke would they have in it? And really, that is more accurate to the movie than the actual trailers were. I remember watching the movie on a plane. It was right after I departed from the UK and said goodbye to my girlfriend. Feeling miserable that I've left the love of my life, I thought, well, I can't possibly feel worse. I don't want to put on a good movie and mar that, so I guess I'll watch the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Chris Pratt plays Mario because he's a recognizable Hollywood white guy, while Charlie Day is actually a pretty good Luigi, and I'd say Jack Black is the perfect Bowser. Peach is shoved through the Hollywood writing machine, meaning she's a generic girl boss character because a girl acting feminine, even if that's how she acts in the source material, is sexist, I guess, to Hollywood. When licensed music isn't blaring in your ears, it's a bunch of references to pander to fans to cover up for how shallow the narrative is. You know what, I'm not gonna talk about the movie anymore, I'm gonna talk about the response to it, which critics rightfully panned it as just mediocre. In fact, 56 or even 60% isn't too bad a score, but to Nintendo fans who saw the first movie they've seen in years, they were seeing red. They couldn't believe they dare criticize their precious plumber. So Nintendo fans rushed online to make fun of critics thinking critically about media and doing their job. So what do you get when a bunch of people en masse cheer on mediocrity? I don't know, I haven't seen the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Well, now that I angered likely several viewers, I'll give you a chance to make fun of my opinions. I love Shenmue. Shenmue is one of my favorite video games ever, favorite video game series. Yes, I even enjoyed 3. I'm down that bad for Shenmue, so why am I talking about it? Shenmue didn't get a movie, it got an anime but no movie? Aha, it did. Shenmue the Movie. Oh, that's some glare. Ooh, Shenmue the Movie. Shenmue 2 is a proper sequel. You're gonna be lost if you play it without playing Shenmue 1. And since the Dreamcast was a sinking ship, and Shenmue 2 on the Dreamcast never came over to America, what were they gonna do when they were releasing Shenmue 2 on Xbox? Their answer, strangely, today would be to port Shenmue 1, but back then, nope. They turned the cutscenes of Shenmue into Shenmue the Movie and released Shenmue 2 with that disc. So this is distinct from everything else I talked about before and everything else I'll talk about after on this list because how much is it an adaptation? At most how it's cut and eliminating the interactive elements, But this is the cutscenes from the game. It has less in common with Sonic OVA, which is an actual adaptation, and more in common with when you'd see those videos like Sonic 06 the movie, and it's really just a compilation of in-game cutscenes. They did that but released it as an official product. Well, not released it as an official product, it comes with Shenmue 2 the game, which I think was the right call to contextualize the sequel because it's one that needs contextualizing. Again, you will be lost if you go straight into Shenmue 2. That said, it's not as cheap as cutscene compilations on YouTube. There are moments where they try to convey the ambience of the game with almost like a Gmod video. Like they'll have some establishing camera shots which are not from the game. So they did make some efforts, even if utilizing what they had in the games, they did make some effort to translate it into a more digestible cinematic experience. Shenmue is already a very narrative-heavy game, so converting it into a movie, especially when using that material, isn't too hard. So because of that, I still like Shenmue the movie. Of course, my ideal way to interact with that story is interactively through a game, but the movie is interesting as a sort of experiment, at least if you've played the games and don't need the context. It's interesting to see what a product like this would be like. Speaking of product, even though it's not one, there is a similar actual product like this. Onimusha Dawn of Dreams was released on DVD, and that is a compilation of the video game's cutscenes. Weird. I'm not entirely sure how they do it for that one, but that's really weird that they expect you to pick up a DVD, actually buy this, like, just to watch some cutscenes. I don't know why they thought that that would work. I think now that Shenmue is more available to be played, people realize what a unique beast it is. But back in the day, I remember a lot of people compared Yakuza to Shenmue. I guess because it had a spiky-haired Japanese guy going through Japan as a main character. I don't know. I never really understood why people compared the two. But that's my way of segueing into Yakuza Like a Dragon. No, not the name for Yakuza 7 in the West. Yakuza Like a Dragon, the movie. Yakuza Like a Dragon is directed by Takashi Miike, one of my favorite film directors, and he's a director not unfamiliar with Yakuza movies. In fact, he's arguably most famous for making Yakuza movies. So this would seem like a match made in heaven. But this is a dreadful watch to me. For one, the story starts halfway through the game. I'm not joking. You are only getting half of the story of the game. And games are going to be longer than movies, but that's what the job of adapting them. You have to truncate the story. And when I say truncate, I don't mean just cut out half of it. Like, you cut where you have to. So, if you are not familiar with the games, you're gonna be lost watching this. The fight scenes are the movie at its best. Miike adapted gameplay elements pretty directly. The fight scenes can be silly, and even Kazuma has this blue aura like he does in the games when he has enough heat action. There's even this weird point at the end where Kazuma uses Stamina and X. Yes, the health item from the game, he uses it to beat the final boss. I mean, that's what you do in the game, but that's like if Leon in the Resident Evil movie grabbed a plant off the ground and ate it to regain health. I got a kick out of that. And that's one of my favorite things about Miike movies is strange Miike-isms. So, or as I call them. So, I got a kick out of that, but the rest of it not so much. But some things shouldn't be adapted into a movie, even if there's something the games are really well known for, and that is Yakuza's sub-stories. In the video games, it's fun to explore the different tones some of the sub-stories have. They can be silly, and sometimes just really good stories. So they adapt it into a movie which already has half of the story cut out. Cut out these sub-stories and put in the rest of the actual story. But if that's not bad enough, part of the appeal of the sub-stories in the game are the fact that it's a game, that you can interact with it. Well, that is to say that Kazuma Kiryu interacts with these sub-stories and you get to see different sides of him apart from the main storyline. But here, the way the script adapts the sub-stories is there are two other stories going on, two other plots that barely connect at all to Kazuma. So they're just two mostly disconnected stories going on while the movie you actually want to see is going on. It's not a good one, and going back to what I said about character and Sonic, Haruka is not the innocent child she is in the games in this one. She actually knows the scummy town pretty well, and Kiryu pulls out a shotgun on Majima, which he would never do in the games. Maybe he'd pull out a bike, but not a shotgun. The next movie on my list is one I actually liked, even if unfortunately my girlfriend wasn't as big a fan. Lara Croft Tomb Raider. This is one I actually want to pop in and watch again, since I just finished the original Tomb Raider, the original 6 Tomb Raider games, and since I've seen this, I also beat the Survivor trilogy. I haven't played the middle series, but I do want to one day. So now I'm pretty familiar with Lara Croft, so I'd like to see this again. Angelina Jolie. Yeah, she's not British, but visually, I think she's the perfect Lara Croft, and I remember her being a joy to see in this movie. And not to mention, Lara Croft, the fact that this movie is called Lara Croft Tomb Raider, I have a fondness thinking back to that era when a video game character can be such an icon that extends past the video game realm and bleed into popular culture.
Hey, that must be the onboard computer.
Great! Fancy game of Tomb Raider?
The story is convoluted and nonsensical. That's my girlfriend's biggest issue with it, that she struggled to follow it. But as an excuse to go set piece to set piece, there are some fun action scenes in this. As for other things related to the game that I get now, in the movie Lara Croft has this Pez dispenser for ammo, like she'll move her pistols up and like reload them going down to her hips, and it's like in the game she has infinite ammo. That's something that no one would really think about for a movie, but I find it interesting that they turned that game mechanic into a gadget. And they also, maybe even going off of that, they added this little computer buddy that helps her out, which made its way from the silver screen into video games because they took that premise into Tomb Raider Legends. She has a computer buddy in that game too. I can't remember if the movie does anything else too interesting with stuff from the games, but now that I'm more familiar with them, I think it's about time for a rewatch. Sorry for the change in attire, guys, but I just realized that I forgot to put a movie on the list, and one that I quite liked when I saw it. And I know that it's unconvincing to say that, considering I forgot about it. But trust me, I thought it was worth rectifying this mistake to record after the fact and talk about DOA Dead or Alive. This is based off the game of the same name, which is my girlfriend's favorite fighting series. I got quite into it too, seeing her go into the arcade mode and get some of the characters' crazy endings. Emphasis on crazy because the characters in this series are so fun. That's why I love it too, and thankfully the movie knows that and indulges in that humor. In terms of the fights, they're choreographed entertainingly too, so it nails that sense of the game where it's both funny and pretty cool. My girlfriend's favorite character is Ayane. My favorite character from the series I think is Tina, who is played by Jamie Presley from My Name is Earl. I don't know if she's necessarily the perfect Tina, but she's the right Tina for this movie as her acting leans into its humor.
Tina, it's showtime!
Not now, I'm in my underwear.
Seems like we found ourselves a special friend. We'll settle up tomorrow, sweetie.
I know it's kinda weird to sing its praise after I forgot to mention it, but it is a fun, silly one to pop in, especially if you're a fan of the games. It even has a reference to Extreme Beach Volleyball. But anyways, that's it for my interruption. Now back to what I recorded earlier. Okay, next up, Detective Pikachu. I'm not familiar with the Detective Pikachu game, and neither am I too familiar with Pokemon itself. I'm more familiar with the anime, which brings up a question: do the Pokemon anime movies count as video game movies? I don't count them. The Pokemon movies are based more on the anime. They are more companion pieces to the anime, while the anime is more companion pieces for the game. So considering that leniency, the movies are too far removed from the games for me to consider them video game movies. Unlike Detective Pikachu, I'm a big monster fan, so seeing all the Pokemons in this movie were really cool, especially seeing how they interact with the city they're in. My girlfriend and I are big fans of the anime, specifically its reign on 4Kids. So, Pokemon has already proven itself in the narrative space to me. I really love the TV show, and going into this movie I quite enjoyed it. I found its twist predictable, but it's a kid's mystery movie. I can't be too upset. In terms of seeing the adventure itself, I remember enjoying it. I remember being a little miffed because this is from Legendary, the same studio that does the Monsterverse. So I would see them mess up Godzilla 2014 and then Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then I'd see them get Kong Skull Island right and Detective Pikachu right, and I'm like, why can't you just do good by my boy? Why can't you make a good Godzilla movie? Eventually they would. I do like Godzilla vs. Kong, but well, I'm getting a little bit rambly for this ramble. Going on to another mystery movie, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. I love the Ace Attorney games. Visual novels are some of my favorite games, and that's thanks to Ace Attorney. I got into them at a young age, and I just feel so nostalgic about this franchise. The characters are classic to me, so this movie had a lot to live up to. It's another Takashi Miike movie, my favorite director, but as you know from my experience with Yakuza, you have to see the movie to see what it's like. And I'm glad I saw this one, because it lives up to the games. The characters look almost straight out of the games, and weary of repeating myself, I already made a YouTube Shorts video reviewing this movie. It's good, but I think my favorite thing about it is the Ace Attorney game is about, well, let me think, because it doesn't include the bonus 5th case, which was made for the DS port. So, the Ace Attorney game is about 11 hours, and they condensed that successfully into a 2-hour movie. There's a lot there, and the cuts made to this movie are exactly what needed to be cut to make it this length. I was really surprised with this one, especially with my high standards given the source material. It's different enough to set itself apart from the source material, but it's faithful enough that it's still Ace Attorney for me. Okay, now on to Silent Hill. This is another movie that my girlfriend and I had differing thoughts on. Perhaps her thoughts are a bit more valid. She is more familiar with Silent Hill, although she was gracious enough to stream most of the games to me. All the games she played of the series, I saw her play, so I'm not a complete noob to Silent Hill. We both watched this movie, and I actually liked it. She wasn't too into it. There's a lot of depth in the Silent Hill games, like what enemies represent of a character's psyche. And in this movie, they're more used as monsters. They are lifted from the games without much thought as to what they represent, which is what a lot of fans don't like. But I think interpretation is malleable enough that some of these enemies can still work for me for representing the psyche of, if you know the series, if you know this movie, you know where the monsters stem from. And I can twist them around enough that I think they can fit the psyche of the character they're supposed to represent. The feeling of the town is on point. And when the police officer takes off her jacket and reveals her outfit from the game, oh, that was so cool. At the time, you were very rarely going to see a video game to movie adaptation that remained this truthful to the vision of the games. Even when it does its own thing, it's good. Like when the real world shifts into the other world. That was so memorable they took that and put that into Silent Hill Homecoming, which is probably the coolest thing about that game. Silent Hill is a beloved franchise. The games have a lot of depth and narrative, so anything changed or altered for a movie is going to be held to scrutiny. And I think it holds up. It's not perfect, but for a video game movie, in terms of getting the feel of Silent Hill down, especially the town and visually, I got into it. I was surprised. It's better than I thought. The first Silent Hill movie is based a bit around the first game, but plays loose with its narrative plot beats. The second movie, Silent Hill Revelations, is more faithful of an faithful. It reflects Silent Hill 3 more, but it is not a good movie. The fact that it takes Silent Hill 3 more directly in terms of its story and messes it up in awful, confusing ways, that's something that fans are going to get way more upset about. And that's something that I got upset about. Like, Silent Hill 1 is more of its own thing. The fact that Revelations is more like 3, it begs you to compare the two and see why Revelations is awful. What can I say? It starts on a Pop-Tart jump scare and ends with two of the bosses from the games fighting like a kid mashing his action figures together. Just takes the fear right out of it. A similar thing can be said about the Resident Evil Alice movies. Now, I love Resident Evil. I've played practically all the games, even some of the spin-offs. I love it, so I had to venture into the live-action adaptations of them. The first movie's okay. It's enjoyable and a bit schlocky, but it gets worse and worse as the series goes on. And this is one of the biggest video game franchises, and it's a movie series with 6 movies. That's impressive for something that's just a movie, let alone an adaptation of something. I feel little point talking about especially each and every one, even if I could talk about how stupid it is that it becomes a Mad Max world for just one movie. I'd rather direct you to Phalus's reviews of them, which are really thorough and tell you all you need to know about these movies. If I wanted to quickly convey how awful these movies are as adaptations, I need nothing more than to cite that it takes 4 movies until the 4th movie that the main character of the game shows up. Chris Redfield only shows up in 1 movie, only 1 out of 6 movies, and it's the 4th one. And what about Leon? Well, he shows up 5 movies. He shows up in the 5th one, and once again, in only 1 movie. The 2 main characters of the series hardly show up in the movies. Instead, you get these stupid side characters, and even when you do get characters from the games, usually Alice, Paul W.S. Anderson's wife, Mia Jovovich, gets in front of them and looks cooler to make your favorite characters from the source material look like chumps. They're bad adaptations, they're bad sequels to each other with a bevy of contradiction between film to film within films themselves. Just whatever. Bad. So that lowered the bar pretty low to make way for 2021's, I'm pretty sure 2021's, Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. This was a movie that held promise. As fans who saw the Resident Evil Alice series, which was always on TV, that's probably how it got 6 movies. It was always one of the movies was airing on the Sci-Fi Channel. But whereas those movies were fanfiction Paul W.S. Anderson inserted his wife into, this was a movie that promised to be more faithful to the games. It was adapting both Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2. I like that it tried to tell the story of the games, even if I don't like that it meshed 1 and 2 together to be going on at the same time. That's weird. Even if I didn't like that, I like that it tried to be more accurate to the source material. And not to mention, the Raccoon City Police Department looks like it's right out of Resident Evil 2 remake. But really speaking, it's forgettable. I don't remember too much about it. It's mediocre, better than the Alice ones, but it's not a good movie. The things I remember most are the things that it would foreshadow to happen in next movies. Like there's even a bit of Code Veronica in here foreshadowing characters that would show up that aren't gonna show up now because this movie flopped and Sony is running to Zach Krieger to make the new one. At most, I'll remember this movie because it's an example of how fast Hollywood has to move while not letting go of its IPs. This movie flopped. Well, don't want to have hope to make a better one next time and actually continue the series. Let's just shove it in the trash and hope fans forget and just make a new one. Resident Evil. Which, Zach Krieger's one does look promising, especially more than what preceded it, but I'll see when it comes out. The best Resident Evil movies are the anime movies, and these probably fly under the radar for some, but not for fans. These are proper sequels. These aren't original characters, these aren't their own continuity, these continue the stories of the games. I recently rewatched Degeneration with my girlfriend, and it's not perfect. Leon shamefully acts like a robot, he's really unemotive throughout most of the movie. But counter to that, I love Claire's character. It's cool seeing her act outside of the zombie scenarios that the games center around. Of course this one does feature zombies, but you get to see how she acts in a normal situation. It's stuff that illustrates her character, like directly confronting a senator and slapping him in the face.
Oh, bastard!
Claire is awesome in this movie. And she's also played by Allison Court, who to me will forever be the voice of the character. The movie is for fans. Leon and Claire team up again like in Resident Evil 2, even the G-Virus returns, and you get short flashbacks to their time in Raccoon City. You only see them back then in their original outfits for a few seconds, but for a Resident Evil fan, and before the remake, that was a big deal. That was as close to a Resident Evil 2 remake as you were getting. Objectively as a movie, Degeneration isn't great, but it's better for a fan, and not in a pandery referencey way, because you get to see more of the characters, and how that world would utilize, how that world responded to the Raccoon City outbreak. As a fan, I enjoy it. I remember the sequel, Damnation, being better. That one has Leon and Ada, and Leon is a way better written character in that. I watched the special features in those movies, and the director is a big Resident Evil nerd. He talks about how the Tyrant in Damnation towers over any of the other ones, even in the American movies, which I'm like, dang, you watch those too? And he also talks about how he imagines how Leon and Ada would almost meet after the events of Resident Evil 2, and I'm like, dang, you're espousing like your headcanon fan fiction in the special features on how you think the context of these characters are. And I like that. I'm like, you're a fan. You are perfect to work on these movies. But unfortunately, he only helmed the two first Resident Evil anime. After that, it was handed over to the writer of Psycho Pass. I'm not familiar with who directed those ones, but Resident Evil Vendetta is not a good movie. I don't like it, at least. I don't think many people do.
Hey, I just realized DC and Damien aren't talking about Breaking Bad for once.
Hey, don't go there, Chris.
Yo, that shit's ahead of its time.
It's a goddamn masterpiece.
At best, they brought back Rebecca Chambers. I liked seeing her again. At worst, Leon's depressed, and the ending is too unbelievably happy fix-all ending. One of the plot lines from it is carried on in Resident Evil Death Island, which is a better movie. I do enjoy Death Island. A lot of people seem to, which makes sense. Death Island is like the Avengers of Resident Evil. all the characters get together. Yeah, I fanboyed out seeing Leon interact with Jill, which never happened in the games. It's like, wow, I get to see these two, how they jive with each other. That was pretty cool. Not to mention, Death Island is a Jill movie. As the series went on, you saw less of her character, so I like that this took advantage of what her character is up to now. And some of the guilt she feels after one of the games, it utilized it cleverly, and I enjoyed seeing her, especially in the lead role. Again, I don't know if I could call it great as a movie in its own right. It's pretty good, the action is fun, but you're gonna get more of your mileage out of it if you're a fan, because it's almost certain you'll see your favorite character in this one. Oh, also another thing about these movies. I like that they are based in the world that their source material is. If they can do that, why can't Sonic the Hedgehog movie? Why can't Super Mario Bros. The movie? Why does that have to be an isekai? The viewer is already, if they aren't familiar, you just expose them to the rules of that world anyway. I don't know, Hollywood's so afraid that it's going to get anyone lost that they really have to handhold them and be like, no, this is a new world, this is for you, this is its own thing. When the Resident Evil movies, they made 4 Resident Evil anime movies, and that's not even including the Netflix show. If these are big enough to have this much in Japan and still base themselves in the world of the games, why can't our movies do that? The next 2 I want to talk about is Metal Gear Solid Bande Destiny, which I don't know if it counts as a video game movie adaptation. These are graphic novels based on the Metal Gear Solid series and adapted in the collection as a voiced movie. And it's pretty cool seeing the panels. The art does remind me of Yoji Shinkawa's art for the games. The first one is a bit too accurate to the first game to where I'm like, okay, these games are cinematic anyway. I'll just play the games if I want a movie, because that's what you're going to get out of Metal Gear. Metal Gear 2, Metal Gear Solid 2 Band Destiny diverges more from the source material to justify itself. You play as Raiden, and because it's a video game, Raiden does most of the work because that's just giving the player characters something to do. But in this movie, it adapts it by way of having Snake do some of the work. So that's something interesting that I thought was a good way to adapt it. And, well, maybe I also like it more because I love Metal Gear Solid 2. That's my favorite one. This one justifies itself more with its differences, although I will say, having Snake fight the final boss in this loses a lot of meaning from the original. That's my biggest complaint. Otherwise, this is a solid one, and if you enjoy Metal Gear Solid 2, give this one a shot, especially since it comes on the disc. Okay, next up, Bayonetta Bloody Fate. Yeah, you probably forgot there was a Bayonetta anime movie. It's pretty, I guess fittingly stylish to the games. Well, maybe that's just because the characters are that well designed. It's fun enough action-wise. I kinda wish it was its own story, but it's adapted on the first game. So, if you played the game, you're gonna recognize the plot beats here. At most, it's just a different medium. Even directly having stuff like, oh, a character, we want Bayonetta to have these weapons now, so just plot device, give it to her. That's stuff that, I mean, getting weaponry is a common mechanic in a game, but that can't be adapted so directly into a movie. Maybe the coolest thing is that they got the voice actors from the game, although given who played Bayonetta at the time and the controversy later, maybe that's not so cool. I don't want to go into it. The movie's just okay. Now for the last one that I've seen, and this is one I'm gonna have to read off of my notes. Steins Gate the Movie, Load Region of Déjà Vu. Steins Gate is brilliant. I played Steins Gate Elite, and I love this style of writing, and that seems to be often in Japan. I've seen it in Godzilla SP, the Science Adventure series, which Steins Gate is in, and Zero Escape. This way of writing quantum mechanics and thought experiments into a show, and the quantum mechanics of Steins Gate are very, very important. A lot of the story is exposition, but that's because it's setting up the rules, which are really great to see how it plays out. It's time travel, so it can get muddy quickly in the hands of an unskilled writer, but in the game, the rules are set up so defined, and it adheres so coherently to them that it all makes sense, and it's a joy to see how so. The game follows a lovable cast of otaku, and the movie is a sequel to the game. It's fun seeing these characters back again, and dancing around spoilers of the game. The main character carries a huge weight on him through the game, and by the end of it, it's a thankless job. And this is a movie that's gratifying in that one of the characters that he works so hard for in the game, this is a movie where she understands what he went through, where she can appreciate what he did, and it's gratifying in that sense. That said, to achieve that, they really mess with the rules to get this story going. That might be my biggest complaint with it, especially since the rules and all the time devoted into setting them up is really important to the source material. So to just be like, and play loosey-goosey with them, that was disappointing. So that, and also I'll just give it a quick mention, there's something nearing the end that I felt a bit icky about. Other than those two things, the emotional journey of this movie is worth watching if you're a fan. It's more about Okabe's, the main character's, love interest, Makise Kurisu. So you get something a bit different. It's more from her perspective, and if the original source material as a game has both brain and heart, this one has less brain, but its heart is still enough that as a fan, I still could get something out of it. So that was my thoughts on the video game movies I've seen. Oh wait, I forgot to mention Corpse Party. There, I mentioned it. So what can I conclude based on the topic at hand? I don't know. Please don't hurt me for not liking the Super Mario Bros. The movie. Looking at my list, the ones I love are the ones that are set in the world, and they benefit from what the world of each game set up. So they're at an advantage, although it's still an adaptation in that they have to adapt the characters and that world for a different medium. So there's that, but looking at some of the other ones, I think I can get what's most important about an adaptation, and it's character and feel. Like Sonic in Sonic the OVA feels like Sonic, not so much in his movie. Silent Hill, even if my girlfriend didn't like it, it felt like Silent Hill to me. Character and tone are probably the most important when it comes to an adaptation. Hello everyone, post-production Zib here because I can't help but yap even at the end of a 45-minute video. But I just wanted to chime in with the third and what might be the most important pillar of a video game adaptation movie, just being a good movie. There are at least a couple on this list that do falter because of that. Also, I do want to say that I could have picked a better example than Sonic in Sonic OVA because there are certain moments of his that feel out of character for as we know him now, but I'm more forgiving of it back then considering the ambiguities around his character at that time. So the three pillars of a good video game adaptation movie, feel, character, and just being a good movie. Out of the list that I mentioned, I think the best at that is Ace Attorney. I think that is my favorite video game adaptation movie, although it has the benefit of adapting the story from the game, which is already great. In terms of being a more original script, I'd have to say the best of these is probably Resident Evil Damnation, but I felt I had to edit in this addendum to properly cap off this video, so before I ramble on for another 40 minutes, let's get back to what I originally filmed. But what do you think? What do you think about any of the movies that I mentioned here? What do you think about video game movies in general? I'd love to hear. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and take care.